There is a particular kind of loneliness that has no name. It doesn't come from being abandoned, or rejected, or left behind in the way most people understand those words. It comes from being in a room full of people, laughing at the right moments, saying the right things, and still feeling like you are watching everything from behind a glass wall, like you are a visitor in a world everyone else seems to belong to, naturally. If you have ever felt that, this is for you. Most people assume that having a high intellect is a gift in the purest sense, that it opens doors, solves problems, makes life easier to navigate. And in some ways, yes, it does. But there is another side to it that almost nobody talks about, a side that is quieter, heavier, and for many people far more defining than any grade they ever received or any problem they ever solved. The mind that sees too much also suffers too much, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that announces itself. It suffers in small, persistent ways that accumulate over years until a person begins to wonder if something is fundamentally wrong with them. Why can't I just enjoy things the way others seem to? Why do I always feel 2 steps ahead of the conversation, but somehow still behind in life? Why does connection feel so exhausting when I want it so badly? These questions are not signs of arrogance. They are signs of someone who has been quietly carrying a weight that was never acknowledged, never named, and therefore never truly understood. When a child begins to think differently from those around them, the world does not always respond with celebration. Sometimes a parent feels unsettled by questions they cannot answer. Sometimes a teacher mistakes depth for disobedience. Sometimes peers respond to curiosity with cruelty, the way children do when something feels unfamiliar to them. And so the child learns slowly and painfully that being themselves creates distance, that the very thing that makes them who they are is the thing that makes belonging harder. This is where the first wound forms, not a dramatic wound, not something you could point to and say, that is where it happened. It is more like a slow erosion, the way water eventually hollows stone. The child begins to hide, not consciously, not as a strategy, but as a survival instinct. They learn to translate themselves, to shrink their vocabulary, to pretend they find things funny that they don't find funny, to perform a version of themselves that fits more comfortably in the spaces they need to survive. Psychologists call this masking, and for many highly intelligent people it begins so early and becomes so practiced that by adulthood they have almost entirely forgotten what they actually look like underneath it. They know how to be who the room needs them to be, but they have lost the thread back to who they are when no one is watching. There is a concept in developmental psychology about what happens when a child's authentic self is repeatedly met with indifference or correction. The child does not disappear. Instead, they build a second self, a more acceptable self, a self that gets approval, that avoids punishment, that keeps the peace, and they begin to live inside that constructed version. But the original self does not vanish. It waits, it watches, and sometimes late at night, it sends signals in the form of a hollow feeling, a restlessness that has no clear cause, a longing for something you cannot name. That hollow feeling is not depression in the clinical sense, though it can certainly deepen into that. It is more like homesickness, a longing for a version of yourself that you were never quite allowed to be. Many highly intelligent people also carry what researchers describe as a heightened sensitivity to existential threat. Because their minds process complexity at a deeper level, they also perceive risk, inconsistency, and meaning at a deeper level. A child with this kind of mind will often sense tension in a room before anyone speaks. They will notice the flicker in a parent's expression that reveals something the parent is trying to hide. They will pick up on the gap between what people say and what people mean, and they will internalize that gap as their responsibility to bridge. This creates a particular kind of exhaustion that follows highly intelligent people throughout their lives. The exhaustion of always being aware, of never quite being able to turn the processing off. The mind keeps running even when the body is still. It replays conversations, analyses patterns, anticipates outcomes. It is efficient in ways that serve survival, but it is also relentless in ways that make peace feel genuinely out of reach. Sleep becomes complicated. Relationships become complicated. Even simple moments of joy become complicated, because the mind cannot resist pulling apart the components of the experience until the feeling dissolves. There is a particular grief in knowing that you have thought your way out of happiness again, and being unable to stop yourself from doing it. And then there is the loneliness. The specific, aching loneliness that comes not from lack of people, but from lack of resonance. You can be surrounded by friends who love you, a family who is proud of you, colleagues who respect you, and still feel profoundly unseen. Because the conversations that sustain your soul, the ones that go deep enough to matter, feel so rare that when they do happen, you hold on to them for years. You remember the exact words. You think about them in quiet moments. Because real contact, the feeling of being genuinely understood rather than merely tolerated or admired, is something you encounter so infrequently that it becomes almost mythological. This loneliness is also connected to something that doesn't get discussed enough: the weight of potential. From an early age, highly intelligent people are often told what they are capable of, what they should become, what their gifts oblige them to produce. And this creates a strange kind of pressure that has nothing to do with ambition and everything to do with fear. The fear of wasting what you were given. The fear of disappointing the expectations that were placed on you before you were old enough to choose them. The fear that if you are not extraordinary, you are nothing. That fear is not vanity. It is a wound. It is what happens when a person's worth becomes entangled with their performance before they are old enough to understand the difference between the two, and it follows them. Into every career choice, every creative project, every relationship, there is always a quiet voice underneath asking, is this enough? Am I enough? Is this what I was supposed to do with all of this? Some people respond to this pressure by overachieving. They build, accomplish, produce. They move from one achievement to the next with a speed that looks like success but feels like running. Because slowing down means feeling the hollow space that the movement was designed to keep them from noticing. Others respond by withdrawing, by retreating from the arenas where failure feels most dangerous, by becoming interested in everything and committed to nothing. Because commitment means exposure, and exposure means the possibility of discovering that your gift was never as significant as everyone believed. Both of these are survival strategies. Neither of them are character flaws. They are what happens when an extraordinary mind grows up in an ordinary world that never quite knew what to do with it. There is also a pattern that appears again and again in highly intelligent people that is almost never talked about in the conversations we have about intellect. It is the pattern of emotional underestimation. The assumption, often held by the person themselves, that because their thinking is advanced, their emotional life should be too. That they should be able to reason their way through grief. That they should understand their anxiety well enough to dissolve it. That insight should translate automatically into healing. But the mind and the heart do not speak the same language. You can have a perfect intellectual understanding of why you are suffering and still be suffering completely. You can know exactly where a wound came from, map its origins with precision, trace its psychological roots all the way back to childhood, and still feel it ache when it is touched. Knowing is not the same as healing. And for many highly intelligent people, this gap between knowing and feeling becomes its own source of shame. I understand this. So why am I still struggling? Because understanding is only the beginning. Healing happens in a different register entirely. It happens in the body, in relationship, in the slow, vulnerable practice of allowing yourself to be seen in the places where you feel most uncertain. Not the places where you are brilliant, not the places where you can impress, the places where you are still figuring it out, where you are soft and scared and genuinely unsure. And that kind of vulnerability is terrifying for someone who learned early that their safety depended on being the most capable person in the room. Being wrong, being uncertain, being visibly human in the messy way that humans are, feels like an exposure. A removal of the armor that has been so carefully constructed over so many years. Even when the rational mind knows that the armor is not serving them anymore, the body does not let it go easily, because the body remembers what happened before the armor, and it is not ready to forget. There is something worth sitting with here, the traits that make life harder for highly intelligent people. The overthinking, the difficulty with belonging, the restlessness, the isolation, the sensitivity to meaning and its absence. These are not pathologies. They are not evidence of being broken. They are evidence of a mind that was built to run deeper than the environment it was placed in could support. A river that runs faster than its banks. The problem was never the river. The problem is that no one ever told you it was okay to be exactly this kind of river. That the speed, the depth, the way you overflow sometimes, these were always supposed to be features rather than flaws. But instead, you were handed a set of buckets and told to make yourself smaller and more manageable and more useful to the people who didn't know what to do with all of that water. Healing, for someone who lives this way, is not about becoming simpler. It is not about learning to care less, or think less, or feel less. It is about gradually, carefully, learning to trust that the full version of you does not have to be hidden to be safe, that you can bring your actual depth into a conversation and not destroy it. That there are people who will not be intimidated by how far your mind goes. That connection does not require you to perform a smaller version of yourself in order to be accepted. It is also about learning to grieve, to actually mourn the years spent translating yourself, the relationships you held back from because you couldn't afford the risk, the creative work you abandoned because perfection felt safer than vulnerability, the moments of genuine joy you talked yourself out of because your mind wouldn't stop dissecting them. These are real losses. They deserve to be acknowledged as losses, not rationalized away as the necessary costs of intelligence. And then slowly, after the grief has been given space, something else becomes possible. A gentler relationship with your own mind, not a conquest of it. Not a suppression of it, but a kind of companionship with it. The ability to notice when the processing has gone past useful and into compulsive, and to offer yourself something other than judgment in that moment. The ability to sit in uncertainty without immediately reaching for an answer. The ability to be in a feeling rather than above it. This is not a destination, it is a practice, and it is imperfect and non-linear, and sometimes it feels like you are right back at the beginning. But there is a difference between being at the beginning and being at the beginning again with more understanding than you had the last time. And that understanding, the one you have earned through every difficult, searching, relentlessly honest year of your life, is not nothing. It is, in fact, quite a lot. You are not too much. You have never been too much. You were simply placed in spaces that were not built to hold you, and that is a grief worth feeling, but it is also slowly a freedom. Because when you finally stop trying to fit, you begin the quiet and extraordinary work of building spaces that do. That work takes time. It asks more of you than it should have. Edu. But you are already someone who has always been willing to go deeper than was comfortable, to stay in a question longer than felt safe, to keep searching even when the search itself was exhausting. That capacity has always been yours, and it will carry you further than you know.